everyone. I think I'm spotlit, am I? Yes, there I am. Welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. My name is Jason James. So today we have Professor Alastair Phillips, who is chairing, and then two speakers, Takeshi Fukunaga, the filmmaker, who is joining us from Tokyo, and Debo Akibe, who is one of the main actors in the film, joining us from Akan village in Hokkaido in Japan. And I'll just briefly introduce them. So today's event is about Takeshi Fukunaga's film, Ainu Mosir. And he is obviously a filmmaker, brought up in Hokkaido, but moved to the US, lived there for 16 years before moving back to Tokyo in 2019. And his first feature film, Out of My Hand, won the US Fiction Award, a top prize at the LA Film Festival, the Emerging Filmmaker Award at the San Diego Asian American Film Festival, and so on. And Ainu Mosir itself, which is currently streaming on Netflix in English-speaking markets, and it's actually on in cinemas in Japan at the moment, has also won prizes, won a special jury mention at the International Narrative Competition at the Tribeca Film Festival, and Best Film at the 2020 Guanajuato Film Festival. So Debo Akibe is one of the main actors in it. He is a performer and choreographer of traditional Ainu dances, and he runs a craft goods shop in the Lake Akan village in Kushiro, Hokkaido. He's also managing director of the local craft association. And he brought a production to London a couple of years ago of Othello with an Ainu Othello, which involved quite a lot of Ainu dance and music. That was staged at the Tara Arts Theatre in August 2019, and I actually went to it and very much enjoyed it. And then our chair today is Professor Alastair Phillips. So he's Professor of Film Studies at the University of Warwick and has worked for the BFI and the Edinburgh International Film Festival. I think it's fair to say he has particular expertise in Japanese and Korean or East Asian cinema. And among other things, he is the co-editor of the Japanese cinema book. So he's definitely the right person to be chairing this event, and not me. So on that note, I will pass over to Alastair. There's just briefly a slide here showing you the timeline. So the actual talk will run until about 1, and then Q&A may go on as long as 1:30. Alastair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jason, and hello everybody, and welcome to today's event. It's fantastic to see people joining us from all over the world, in fact, and I'm especially delighted to be chairing this event and speaking to Fukunaga-san and Debo-san. We're going to begin with the trailer for the film to give audiences who've not had a chance to see the film in its entirety a flavour of the film, and then we'll start our conversation.
Akan で4万手をやるっていう話、本当？みんなでチビバを送るんだ。はあ？このコタンで一番大事になる儀式なんだ。やらなきゃ。
父ちゃんはイマンテのこと真剣に考えてたのは本当だよ。
Takeshi-san and Debo-san, thank you very much for joining us today. My first question is to you, Takeshi-san, and it's about the development of the project, really, and what a rich and interesting film it is in terms of its representation of Hokkaido and Ainu culture. But I wonder whether you could tell us a little bit at the beginning about your own relationship between your personal history and Hokkaido and the Ainu culture that we see in this film.
Hi, thank you for the question. Well, first of all, thank you for the Daiwa Foundation for having this amazing opportunity. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm happy to be here and then talk about the film. So my personal connection to Ainu is that, so I'm born and raised in Hokkaido, but I never really had a chance to learn about them or have a interaction with them growing up. And it was only after I moved to US that, kind of like made me realize that I've, really, didn't know anything about it, like by seeing like the situation in Native American in US. And so, at that point, soon after that, I started learning filmmaking, and gradually I started dreaming about making a film about Ainu. And one of the reasons was for me to, learn about them and then the land I'm from. And also, there were only a few films that made about Ainu, and every time it was made, it was Japanese actors playing Ainu roles, which isn't acceptable in this today's standard. So, so making a film starring Ainu people was became kind of like my my dream project, and it took me years to make it, but finally it's completed and out to the audience last year.
Thank you very much, and it's interesting that your sense of the what you wanted to achieve actually began outside Japan, in the US, and you made this comparison or connection to the Native American population of North America. I wonder whether you could say a little bit more about your principal motivation for developing the project. What did you want to achieve, especially in relation to the representation of the Ainu population of Hokkaido?
Well, it's kind of related to what I already said, which is to, I guess, bring the standard in of the cultural representation of Ainu people in media, particularly in cinema, and through that I was hoping to raise more awareness and like on Ainu and then the other many issues around them. I mean, but of course I was fully aware that I was making this film as a Japanese filmmaker. So we can go into the details later how I try to kind of fill the gap.
Yeah.
But so my goal was really to because there, even in Japan, a lot of people don't know anything about Ainu.
Yeah.
And in at schools these days, I heard that they are doing a little bit better as far as education on Ainu and their history. But like when I was in like elementary school and junior high school, I didn't know anything. There wasn't any education aside from just a few sentences about Ainu, and which has made some progress, but still.
Did you feel that you began the film project with a very clear idea of what you wanted to audiences to learn from the project, or did you feel it was during the process of making the film that those ideas became clear about what you wanted to express?
It was during the process. I mean, so my goal was rather broad, like to again to raise awareness on Ainu, and then hopefully let people know about Ainu within and outside of Japan. But I wasn't first I needed to learn more about them, not through like books or not through like articles someone wrote, but in person. So the first thing I did was to visit many places in Hokkaido and outside of Hokkaido, and then meet as many Ainu people as possible, and really educate myself.
When did you start collaborating with Takeshi-san, Debo-san, and what was your contribution to the project?
じゃあ、デボさん、いつから福永さんとの協力を始めて、そしてこの映画にどのような貢献をなさいました？
5年前だな。福永さんが来て、めんどくさそうな変なやつが来たと思ったのが最初だったね。
So it was about 5 years ago that Fukunaga-san came and visited, and I thought he was a bit of a pain to deal with.
Well, could you say more about that?
どういうふうにめんどくさかったのですか？
映画の相談とか、テレビのドラマとか、ニュースの相談はみんな来るんだけど、みんなよく勉強しないまま来る人がいて、それも日本語で言うと興味本位、あまり深く考察しないで来る人が多かったね。でも福永監督はそうじゃなくて、深く考えて一生懸命勉強しようとして来てくれた人です。
So quite a lot of people come and consult me about Ainu related matters for films or TV or various cultural things, but in most cases they don't really study seriously. They don't do any preparatory work before they come, so they're starting from a base of no knowledge at all. But I did feel that with Fukunaga-san, he was actually studying quite hard and was therefore taking the whole issue much more seriously than most people do.
I think we're still waiting for Fukunaga-san to come back.
So yeah. Are you there?
No, he's not back yet.
Okay. All right. I'll continue to talk to Debo-san. I wonder, Debo-san, you in the film, you actually play an important role, a very important role, a central role. You're one of the kind of most important kind of presences in the film. How did you develop your character? Could you say a little bit more about your own participation in the film itself?
デボさんの役は、英語の中で非常に大切な役だと思いますけれども、その役作りはどういうふうにしました？
若いカントという彼がそのアイヌとしてどう考えるか、どういうふうに目覚めるかという狭間に出会った大人として、私もかつてそういう時代があるし、みんなそういう時がある。その時に出会った大人としてどう対処するのかなっていうことが台本の中にあったと思うね。で、俺は実体験とともに台本と協議して混ぜ合わせて考えて、俺はこう言うだろう、ああ言うだろうということの気持ちを込めて台本に沿ってやりました。でも監督が作った台本が、俺とディスカッションしてできた、ちゃんと私の気持ちを汲み取っていたので、素直にできたのと、目の前にいるカントがまさにそういう台本の通りの一番思春期ティーンエイジャーの一番悩みどころをちゃんと本にもあったので、そこでシンクロできたなっていうところです。
Right.
Thank you.
So, so the main character in the film is an adolescent boy called Kanto, and he's exactly in that period of his life where he's approaching adulthood and is trying to think about his own identity as an Ainu or not as an Ainu. And so we developed a script in which that would be the main kind of issue. And of course, I myself went through this period when I was younger. So Kanto and I discussed the script together, and also with Fukunaga-san. So it reflects my own feelings about this. And I think that he himself, Kanto, has a lot in common with the character that he is playing. He actually is an adolescent Ainu boy who is facing the same kind of worries and issues that we all would at that age. And so I think it's quite realistic, and it reflects my own experiences and feelings.
That's so interesting to hear that, because I think you feel that conviction. I think you feel that resonance in the film. I hadn't realized that part of your collaboration was an association with your own personal experience.
その自分の体験を使っているということに気がついていなかったけれども、それを割と強く映画から感じられると思います。
その通りです。みんなの体験が映画に生きていると思います。
So, everybody's actual experiences are reflected in this film.
And the performance by the actor who plays Kanto is quite remarkable, I think, in expressing a lot of that sense of self-development. I wonder whether...
カントの演技が素晴らしいと私は思いました。
Me too.
I wonder whether, because hopefully some of the audience have already seen the film and understood that at the center of the film's narrative is the ritual of the Ayamante, and which plays a very significant role in the progression of Kanto's character, and also your relationship with Kanto. Could you say something about your feelings about the inclusion of the Ayamante ritual in the film, and what you wanted the film to express through its presence in the film?
映画の中でこのイオマンテという儀式が非常に大切だと思いますけれども、自分のそれに関する気持ちはどんな感じですか？そしてそれを映画に見せて、何を表現しようと考えていましたでしょう？
アイヌとして考えるよりも人間として考えて、全人類、地球に住む人間として、結局人間というのは他の命を奪わないと生きていけないということを先祖から学びました。それが熊の命であり、鹿、タヌキ、キツネ、いろいろ動物もいます。だけど昆布にも命がある。それから例えば最近は大根、キャベツ、ピーマン、人参、それも命があります。そういうものをその命を奪わないと人間生きていけないっていうことをちゃんと古い時代から理解していた先住民の生き方、アイヌの生き方、そういう考え方をこの映画の中で表現できたなっていうのが私は感じています。で、普段からそう思っていることがそのまま出たのが嬉しかったです。そこが伝わればいいかな。
So Ainu people have traditions handed down from their ancestors, in which there is a feeling that you shouldn't take the life of another living being, and that's true whether it's a bear or deer or other animals, and even the vegetables that we eat. If we eat radishes or cabbage or peppers, they all have their life, which we are taking away by eating them. But obviously, in order to maintain our own lives, we need to eat something. So we need to take these lives. So the Ainu people have this tradition of seeing the world in that way, and of being thankful and appreciating the other lives that they are absorbing.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry, Alastair, Fukunaga-san is back. Yeah, just to let you know.
Okay.
Fukunaga-san
Hello, Fukunaga-san. Welcome back.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, nice to see you back. We were just talking, Debo-san and I, about the Ayamante ritual in the film. And we can continue talking about that a little bit more, but I was wondering whether you could say something about the relationship between the documentary form and fiction form in the film, because that's a very conscious choice, it looks like to me, for you to incorporate both modes. And perhaps you could speak about that first of all.
Yes. So as I was saying earlier, like my goal was to, like instead of like imposing my preconceived notions or any like enhancing prejudices on Ainu people, rather again like giving a opportunity for a proper representation for the Ainu people, and then like and for me to be rather a bridge for their voices. So to do so, like if I just kept wrote something just based on my ideas on Ainu people and everything, and then just ask them to perform what I wrote, there inevitably there would be a gap between what's in my mind and what the reality.
Yeah.
So it was for a way for me to close that gap and then bring as much voice from Ainu people themselves into the film.
Which you actually incorporate previous documentary footage in your own film to convey that.
Are you talking about previous documentary film? Are you talking about the video footage or
the video footage? I mean,
yes, that's from 1977. That's not my own documentary, but
sure,
it's a documentary of actual ritual that happened way back then.
Previously, before you came back, Fukunaga-san, Debo-san and I were talking about the ritual, the Ayamante ritual, and its significance to Ainu culture and its presence in the film. What did you want to particularly express using the ritual form in the film?
What Debo-san was talking about was definitely one of the reasons why I chose, to depict the ritual in the movie, to really show the weight of the life, which I feel like a lot of us are taking for granted these days. But also, Iomante it used to be one of the most important ritual, and then it's a ritual that's considered to embody Ainu's spirituality and culture, and then so much. But it hasn't been done for many years for many reasons, and then there's a even divide within the Ainu community whether to do it or not. So I thought using that ritual as part of the story elements, I could show so much about Ainu cultural spirituality, but also the all different kinds of opinions on it, and then what are their struggles, and then thoughts that's going into the ritual, and also what it's like to be Ainu in today.
Thank you. Could you say something a little bit more about the division or the kind of different viewpoints? What are they, and how did you manage that?
That's in the film. Hopefully, the audience members would get to see it. But well, it's I'm not. Well, there's just so many different kinds of opinions. So I'm kind of hesitant to just be a representative of their each various voices. But there are people who basically living with a value that's like very much similar to a common Japanese person. So they they just feel sorry to kill animals. But on the other hand, there are other people like the character Debo-san perform as Debo-san in the movie, who who has desire to do it to, really not necessarily just to carry on the tradition, but to kind of, grab, the core of the identity as an Ainu person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's just what's being said in the movie is just a part of it. There are so many different opinions and so many different kind of people, living as Ainu in their own ways. So, I hope, that the film is just a kind of a door for people to, learn more about them. And
I think you've managed to deal with those kind of that subject you're discussing in the film through the decision you made to reveal the story of the ritual through the eyes of one young boy through the adolescence, and this idea of acquiring knowledge through the eyes of someone within the film who's also learning about the culture he inhabits. Could you say a little bit more about that really important decision you've also made to talk about the world of the Ainu and the community through the eyes of a young person?
Right. So initially, it was the main character was actually like young adult, like late 20s or early 30s, something.
Right.
Ainu man. But like the idea of casting an Ainu non-professional actors for Ainu roles in the movie was always there from the beginning. And then I just couldn't find that person, the right person to act as a late 20-something man. And then Kanto was is actually a son of Emi-san, who plays the mother in the movie. And Emi-san, yes, so they're actually son and mother. And Emi-san was my first contact in Akan, and then she like I talked a lot about many things with Emi-san, and then she helped me so much, and of course as well as Debo-san as well. But so when I couldn't find the right person for young adult role, I talked to Emi-san, and then because I changed the idea to cast a teenage boy, because in Akan, there's no high school, so it's either kids up until junior high school, or like more like middle-aged and adult person. So instead of casting someone like in their late years, I wanted to cast someone in the a boy. So in that way, I thought I could maybe make the film more relatable, or as not, and then make it more universal, I guess.
Thank you. And of course, one of the most important things about Kanto is that his father has recently died, and so he's living just with his mother, and therefore the kind of role that he the relationship he develops with Debo-san becomes a sort of like a surrogate father role in the film. Could I ask you, Debo-san, to speak a little bit about that role that you have in relation to Kanto, the surrogate father role, and what you think Kanto learns through your relationship with him in the film?
デボさん、また聞きたいんですけれども、映画の中でカントのお父さんが最近亡くなっていて、デボさんの役がそのお父さんの代わりになると思いますけれども、その間の関係についてどう思いますかとか、どんなことを表現しようと思っていましたか？
実は古い100年以上前のアイヌの社会では父親が亡くなるというのはたくさんあったことです。なぜかというと、アイヌの男というのは山に真っ先に入っていって、崖から落ちたり、事故に遭ったり、雲に遭って食べられたりということはたくさんあったんですね。 そういう関係で、自分の、例えば関東のおじさんとか、関東のお父さんの兄貴とか兄弟が父親代わりに育てる、世話をするということはよくあったことです。それは昭和になっても同じで、父親が亡くなると親戚兄弟が寄ってたかってみんなで男の子を育てる。で、母親が亡くなると女性の兄弟や親戚がみんなで世話をするというのは当たり前のことなので、それが映画の中で見事に表現されていたなっていうところに私がいたということなので、私は何にも違和感なく父親代わりというより、兄の代わり、おじさんのようなアンクルだな、そういう感覚で付き合えばいいんだということは入り込めたというのは、アイヌの背景を知っていた監督の、よく考察してくれたことの、台本のおかげだと思って私はやりやすかったです。そういう役割でした。
Okay. So actually, in Ainu society, if you go back 100 years or something, it was quite common for children to lose their father because Ainu men traditionally were hunters who would go into the mountains and they would quite often die, by falling down a mountain or in an accident, or they would meet a bear and be eaten by a bear. So there is very much a tradition in Ainu society that if that happens to somebody's father, they are brought up by the father's brother or just by other relatives. And that remained the case certainly into the Showa period, starting in the 1930s. Similarly, of course, if mothers died, then children would be brought up by the sisters of the mother or by other relatives. So in that sense, it seems like quite a natural reflection of something that was common in Ainu society. And I thought that it was very good that this was part of the storyline in this film because it did seem quite realistic. So as far as I was concerned, really, I didn't feel there was anything unnatural about it. I just had to behave in the way that an Ainu person naturally would behave if they found themselves bringing up their brother's son in this way. And I found that quite easy.
Thank you very much. Could you say a little bit more about the relationship and what do you think Kanto learns through his relationship with you in the film?
デボさんとの関係で、カントにとっては何の勉強になりますか？もう少しそれも説明してくれますか？
カントっていうのはまさしく現代っ子、今の時代の子ですね。で、私が伝えるべきものは、私はもちろん現代人だけども、もう少し古い時代のことを伝えられることができる役柄でした。で、アイヌ民族っていうのは意外と古い時代のことを伝えることが非常に多くて、それを自分自身も私の世代にとっても非常に重要なテーマでありまして、それをいかにカントのような時代に青年に伝えるか、少年に伝えるかというのは非常に重要な問題でして、その伝える方の葛藤で、それをどう見るかというカントという少年の目を通してそれをどう感じるか、それを受け取って彼がどう自分の体の中で化学反応が起きるかで、どう起きたかということが映画のテーマになっていると思います。これは全人類みんな同じ時代をカントと同じようなことを体験するんであって、そこがこの映画の一番の魅力だと俺は思ってるんだけど、誰もが経験するんだけど、誰にとっても新鮮なんだよっていうことが、この映画がとても生き生きしてるわけなんだなと思いました。はい。
So, I mean, obviously, Kanto is a modern child, But and I also am a modern person, I suppose. But what this was about was teaching him about Ainu traditions, and so Ainu people do pass down traditions from surprisingly long ago. And this has been a significant issue for my generation, is how we should go about transmitting those traditions to the younger Ainu people. And this film is very much about not only that, but how Kanto himself sees it as a young person. You can see that he has quite ambivalent feelings about it in some respects. So it's about how he sees it, how he feels it, what kind of physical response he has to those traditions. And I think that everybody as an adolescent has that kind of experience. So I see that as one of the main attractions of this film. I think that that experience of adolescence and finding your place in the world comes across very vividly in this film.
I agree, and I think it would be a completely different film if Kanto had learnt about these things through his own father. I think it's really important that this transferal of experience or knowledge takes place outside the biological family in that way.
私が感じたのは、カント自身のお父さんからそういうことを教わった場合は全然なんかムードが違う。要するに自分の家族じゃない、まあ家族でしょうけれども、自分のそのお父さんお母さんからじゃない、人から教わるのが非常に大切だと思いますが、いかがですか？
はい。今は実の親から子供っていうのは普通に思うけど、古い時代は自分の本当の親がいないのはよくあることであって、それがおじさんであったり兄貴だったりいろいろあったんですよ。でそれが見事にこの映画では表現されていて、実はそれが普通のことであり大切なことであり、他人から教わることを大切に思うってことが現代社会で失われていて、血縁の近いもの以外の話は聞かないというよくわからない今現代になっちゃったんだけど、実はそうではないこともちゃんと伝えてるのがアイヌ社会だったってことを分かった上でこの映画が出来上がってるっていうのは非常に俺は大事なところをついてくれたなと思ってます。
はい。So, as I mentioned, in Ainu society, it is quite common for people to lose their parents, or at least it was common traditionally, and therefore for them to be learning things from people who are not their direct parents or direct family. And I think that's something that's quite normal, certainly in Ainu society, and it's maybe something that tends to have got lost in the present world, where people won't listen to somebody unless they're their direct relative. But we should have a situation where society as a whole plays a role in educating young people, and I think that's an important part of this film.
I think what's interesting is for the audience is how it accompanies their initiation into the culture that's being shown in the film. That there's a partnering going on between Kantos and the audience. I wonder whether I could come back to Fukunaga-san and ask him to talk a little bit more about our relationship with Kanto. And the other kind of important thing in Kanto's world, as you mentioned before, is his mother. And I didn't know before today that Kanto's mother is his real mother in real life, as it were. I think it's a really subtle part of the film, this relationship between mother and son. Could you say a little bit more about what you wanted to express in that particular relationship in the film?
Well, it's really what what's in the relationship between Emi-san and Kanto. They are like Emi-san has been active, like performing songs and doing like a handcraft, like Ainu handcrafts and everything. But at the same time, she's never forced Kanto to do something cultural to his roots. So her motto was to like immerse, his song Kanto, with Ainu culture and ideas and, all those important things. But in the end, she wanted, to let him decide, what he wanted to do. And that's I think what Amy-san says in the movie, and that's kind of also the message of the movie.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that's a really very subtle and natural aspect of their interaction, their relationship. Of course, the mother in the film does have her own role, as you mentioned. She works in a shop. It's a tourist shop selling products to representing the Ainu culture to visitors. She's also negotiating this world of tradition and the modern world. Could you say a little bit about that? Because it's an important element too of the culture, how it's representing its heritage to in the modern world. What you wanted to express in it?
I mean the tourism aspect.
Yeah.
Well, that's what people actually do in Akan, and that's a way for them to stay close to the Ainu culture and while making a living off of it, and and then within the movie, because of the one of the important themes is identity. There each character has a dilemma, by having the gap between what they do, from day to day, and then what they perhaps want to do, and then I think as like Debo-san often kind of like says, it's not necessarily a particular Ainu thing, like it's a universal thing, as a society becomes more and more international, and like we are almost like detached from our roots. Like I'm Japanese, but I don't know how to proper wear kimono or do some like very traditional thing. And then I think that gap will just only becomes wider and wider.
I mean, in the previous conversation with Debo-san, he used the word ambivalence, and I wonder whether you feel that ambivalence and what you want. Could you say something about it from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel ambivalence in many ways, in many things in my life, but I think the last thing I wanted to do with this film was to say some kind of like black and white answer, because as I said earlier, I was always very careful how to portray Iron people in the movie, and then avoid imposing my preconceived notions. So the film ends with a very kind of open-ended way, and Kanto makes a decision, but at the same time I didn't mean to like say that what kind of decision, firm decision he made. He himself in real life is still like still searching his own way. So,
yeah, you can see that in his face, I think. So we talked a little bit about the kind of principal characters in the film from the human point of view, the kind of Debo-san's character and the Kanto and his mother. But of course, the other really substantial character in the film is Hokkaido itself and the landscape of Hokkaido. And for me, some of the most expressive parts of the film are those where the landscape, in a way, is also speaking. Could you say something about your intentions there, about the representation of nature and the natural world?
Right. Of course, nature is a big part of Ainu culture, and then also the Hokkaido as a location is such a beautiful place, and then that's that's where I'm from. So I have so much personal attachment to it.
Yeah.
So so it's a mix of my personal attraction, longing towards the land, and also the strong connection between the Ainu culture and then the land.
I didn't feel the gaze of an outsider in this film in relation to the landscape. I felt it was made by someone who belonged in it.
Thank you.
Debo-san, could you talk a little bit about the presence of nature and the natural world in the film from your point of view?
またデボさんに聞きたいんですけれども、大自然、その北海道の大自然が結構大きな役割を果たしていると思いますが、この映画で、それに関してどう思います？
私の周りでは当たり前の自然の周りにいっぱいあるんだけども、都会に行くとないよね。で、これがね、全人類を支えているんだってことを常日頃感じてるんだけど、映画を撮影してるときは気がつかなかったけど、完成した映画を見たときに、自分も田舎の人間も都会の人間みんなこれに支えられてるんだなっていうのを改めて感じた映画でした。
Well, for me, obviously living in Hokkaido, we are surrounded by this nature, so it feels quite natural. And of course, nature is supporting all of us as human beings. And when we were shooting the film, I didn't really notice that aspect of it. But when I look at the film, I am much more aware of it. And I think, yes, nature is supporting all of us, both people who live in the country and also people who live in cities.
それはね、都会の人間ほど自然に支えられているのいないと思ったのは水です。都会で飲む水はね、田舎、都会じゃないところの水が都会に持って行って飲んでるっていうのを現実を見たときに、この映画の凄さって思いましたよ。皆さん気がついてほしい。はい。
So a very important feature of the nature in Hokkaido is the water, which plays quite a major role here. So I want everybody to realize that. Obviously, Akan, the village is set on a lake, Lake Akan. So that is very important.
I mean, I suppose going back, Fukunaga-san, to your comments about the landscape and the role of the natural world in the film, you didn't want it to be a touristic kind of picturesque idea of Hokkaido. I feel that there's a sense that there is a real there's a feeling and an atmosphere in the landscape that's responding to what's going on around it. Could you say a little bit about how maybe, if you agree with me, how you achieved that as a film director?
Well, I guess that has a lot to do with how I see the nature, and then also how the great cinematographer captured those beautiful nature. But like it's not just Ainu culture, but also the Japanese culture. The Japanese original religion, Shintoism. Find gods in many a number of gods in nature. So we kind of hold a sense of awe to the nature, and then so it's not something that people can protect or people can control, but it's something that's beyond human. So that's still on the personal level, that's how I see nature too. So I think shooting it in a as you say, like kind of postcard type of like beautiful, just kind of superficially pretty image would be kind of wrong approach to convey that kind of the view on nature.
Of course, Thank you. And of course, the film is also being shown in Japan. And I know we were talking about that yesterday, that it's currently being shown in cinemas in Japan at the moment, whereas a lot of the global audience for the film, I think, is on streaming services such as Netflix at the moment. What's the reaction been both within the community in Hokkaido and also Japan more generally?
Well, in Japan, generally, this movie is supposed to be the first movie first narrative fiction movie about Ainu, starring Ainu people. So it's the first time for people to see this kind of a representation in film. So and then as you mentioned earlier, it has a documentary aspect, and so a lot of things in the movie is based on the reality. So so this film, it became kind of a chance for a lot of people to get a sense of who they are, and then what their what their thoughts are in today's society. And then for Ainu people, I think it's including of course the community where we shot the movie Akan. It's from what I hear, it's been very overwhelming, and then very positive reactions. I don't see this as I think I just see this as a step towards a better future. I don't. The film is not by any means everything about Ainu.
Yeah.
I think.
Sorry to interrupt you. When you say a better future, what do you mean in terms of representation of Ainu culture in Japanese film?
Well, representation, yes, but also just in society in general. I think a lot of people in Japan, well, first of all, they don't know much about Ainu people, and then they see Ainu people as kind of different group of people living in Hokkaido, instead of seeing them as as friends, and then so even though there are many things to be discussed and there are many things to improve, that's not in most of people's mind. And then so I hope this movie kind of makes a step towards that kind of more tolerant society.
When we started talking, you made the connection between your own learning experience and the time that you were in the United States and learning about Native American culture while you were there. Do you feel that kind of analogy still works, is still relevant?
Well, yes and no. Well, yes, in the sense that they Japanese people took over the land of Ainu, and then they and then the Ainu people had to go through dark history of forced assimilation and racism and everything. But no, in the sense that of course it's a two different kind of group of people, and then totally different culture, and different situation too. Like I don't mean to go into many kind of political issues here, but there's a lot to talk and improve.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you also, Debo-san, for your responses. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we can continue the conversation now by including some questions and responses from our audience. Talking about coronavirus, I feel we're kind of coming to the end of today's session, and I just wanted to say that there have been very, very, very few things which have been good about the virus, but one of them has been that we can start to do events like this. And I know from my own experience, and probably several of you are also having this experience, that it is really enriching to be able to bring people together from all over the world, watch a film and talk about it in this way. I'd just like to finish today by thanking Fukunaga-san and Debo-san for everything they've contributed to the discussion today, and for bringing their film to us and allowing us into the world of the Ainu and Hokkaido. Thank you very much indeed on behalf of everybody in the audience.